the ease of getting land, the ease of getting, the trained manpower, and the way you could set up a whole research and development setup, so that you are ahead of the curve in terms of what technology you should plan, because these are capital intensive process. If you think that right now this is a dominant technology, and I will start and I'll take a bet and start manufacturing on this. 3 years down the line, the market is so dynamic and agile that maybe this is not the most prominent technology. And what will happen to your investment by the time your line is up and running? So, those are questions which an investor or a manufacturer need to answer.
So in the best interest of time, I think we shall begin. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time out and joining in today on a Friday evening. It's an absolute privilege and a pleasure to reconnect with everyone and our distinguished panelists who are handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience that they bring in. And thank you to our distinguished audience for joining us. We've received 250 plus registrations, most of whom are COC, CXOs, and senior readers. Many of them are our members and repeat visitors to our webinars, so which is very encouraging and motivates us to provide higher levels of dialogue through the online channels as well. For those of you who are new with us today, the Blue Circle is an exclusive community and ecosystem which is curated for business leaders across 6 sectors, which are energy, e-mobility, real estate, logistics, healthcare, and aerospace and defense. We have 6 more new sector communities being added very soon, and we'll be announcing it on the community app as well. We also present socioeconomic insights, which ultimately determine the evolving complexion of the market. In response to the COVID challenge, the Blue Circle has also accentuated its digital presence. One of the many modes we employ is our weekly webinar series and our digital publication. And in addition to this, I'm happy to share that we've recently launched the first version of the Blue Circle app, curated for leaders, somewhat like the sector-specific LinkedIn for senior leaders, a space to have meaningful conversations, connect with like-minded people, house high-quality curated content, and provide access to business opportunities across our core sectors and the new sector communities which we're adding. So those leaders who are interested, please do join us. I will share the link to the app in the chat section, and also will send out invitations to our new guests post our webinar. We've also begun our selective outreach and have thousands of leaders who've joined the app already. And today, as part of our Make in India series, we're privileged to have big minds and leading thinkers of the industry to join in for our energy communities discussion. The topic is solar PV cell manufacturing, advances and roadblocks. In the best interest of time, I will just briefly mention the names and designations of our panelists. We have with us Mr. Kapil Maheshwari, President, Renewable Energy Development, Reliance Industries; Mr. Prashant Mathur, CEO, Satvik Green Energy; Mr. Rohit Kumar, Head of Indian Subcontinent, Middle East and Africa, REC; and the chair and moderator for the session is Mr. Pawan Chaudhary, best-selling author, CEO, French multinational, public intellectual, a leading thinker in the renewables energy space, also a chairman with the Blue Circle and sits on several boards across the country. Thank you very much, sirs, and thank you very much, audience, for joining in. I now request Mr. Chaudhary to please chair and moderate the session.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. And my moderating of the session is being ably supported by the many questions which we have received already. And we will weave in these questions in the talk track. Might not be able to individually attribute the questions and their brilliance to the individual author. So let me just tell you some of the very bright questions have come from Hemkant Limay, Senior Director, Global Marketing, LM Windpower; Rajeshwar Nimodia, Senior VP, Redwoods; Murugesan Naminathan, Advisor, India Smart Grid Forum; Shovankar Pine, Senior Lead, OR and Safety, Reliance Industries Limited; Professor Joshin John, Xavier Institute of Management and Entrepreneurship, Ramkrishna D, VP of Orb Energy, Gerald Koch, CFO of Orb Energy, Niranjan Patrikar, RSE Stobli, Vijay Khandwekar, Vice President Solar Pennar Industries, and Rajesh Sonalekar, owner of Darya Solar and Farms. So these are the co-authors, you can say, already, and more co-authors of this webinar are going to join, and I'm sure the questions, they're already coming on my WhatsApp, I can see, and I'm sure others are likely to come in. So the renewable energy space is taking leaps, is progressing by leaps and bounds. In an ecological sense, there is no plan B to renewables because there is no planet B. And this realization is coming not only in governments, but in corporates also. Organizations like Anheuser-Busch and others have been hit by climate change. So it is pinching directly the corporates. Large conventional oil and gas companies, which were earlier not so keen on investing in renewables if their renewable to conventional ratio was very low. If they were deeply invested only in conventional energy, they were not moving so fast towards renewable energy. However, that is also changing. You have already seen that the Norwegian major called Statoil has changed its name to Equinor to distance itself from the conventional energy space and to allow it to coherently, nomenclature-wise, also operate in the renewable energy space. So that is a clear transformation. Clean energy is transforming from a good idea to a pillar of the economy. And geopolitically also, not only is clean energy becoming important, but clean energy security is becoming important, which is where the star of the clean energy space, which we are going to speak about, solar PV cell, comes into the foreground. 10 years ago, it was Europe, Japan, and USA which were leading the production of the solar PV cell. Out of the 10 companies, top companies, only 2 were Chinese. Today, all 10 are Chinese. And Rohit was telling us the other day, more than 82% of its production is now happening in China. So how this happened, despite tariff and non-tariff barriers, domestic content requirement, and other ways to become self-reliant, being utilized by many countries, why did they fail? The idea is not to look at the failure. The idea is to look at the lessons which these failures tell us and how to craft our strategy so that we can be self-reliant enduringly and swiftly. So what are the catalysts that will speed the onshoring of PV cell manufacturing? Whether it is the demand, availability of sunlight, government and large corporate commitment, and what are the challenges in the onshoring of PV cell manufacturing, whether it is related to land, technology, capital, regulatory, ecosystem, R&D. This is what we are going to discuss with this illustrious panel which we have today, which are not only practitioners, they are also thought leaders. So let me first go to Kapil and ask him to tell us what is catalyzing the PV cell manufacturing space today, Kapil.
Thanks, Pawan. I mean, good afternoon, everyone. See, we always have this catalyst, and which is what was driving the whole growth, which was the demand. So not that, we are seeing in demand side, India was always very, very good, and, with the whole transparent ecosystem present, it was always very good on the demand side and the downstream, what we call as. So we always have something like but the problem was that we were importing majority of our solar panels. So what I guess some of the catalyst, what I feel needs to be taken care would be that we now look for a complete backward integration. In terms of backward integration, the whole value chain would be that you take sand, or what we call as quartz, make it in metallurgical silicon, convert this metallurgical silicon to polysilicon, from polysilicon to ingot, wafer, solar cell, and solar modules. If you see this whole value chain, presence in India is largely on the cell and module, and majority of it would largely be in the modules. Given that, we cannot say that we are, in terms of integration, we are nicely positioned. So we really need to see how do we create this whole backward integration aspect. And while doing that, we have all seen that how the world has moved from Europe to China. We have all seen in terms of technology, how the world has moved from multi-crystalline panels to mono-PERC panels. We now need to see, given that we have no backlog, or we are not carrying any backlog in terms of the manufacturing base, can we look at some kind of a leapfrog in terms of technology as well? So if you say, while majority of Chinese lines would right now be working with mono-PERC and huge investments are already done, maybe they can be upgraded to, in terms of efficiency and technology, to in TOPCon lines very easily. But if someone really wants to invest in heterojunctions for improvement of efficiency and other benefits, which are,
Is it me only that has lost Kapil, or have others also lost Kapil?
We have lost Kapil.
Yeah, we lost him.
So Rohit, why don't you come in and fill in the blanks?
Okay. So I think what Kapil was trying to say is, when you talk about technology side, mono-PERC definitely is dominating today, and it is a mainstream technology today. Now, whereas TOPCon and heterojunction are catching up very fast. So the interest in these technologies is increasing. And for the Chinese players, or any of the companies who have already invested into mono-PERC lines today, the only option left for them is to basically move from mono-PERC to TOPCon. They cannot, convert these lines into HJT. Whereas for any manufacturer or a newcomer in the industry, for a newcomer today, it makes better sense to go with HJT. So just to summarize, Kapil is back. Kapil, you want to take over?
Yeah, go ahead.
First, I was talking on technology, and that's where you fail with the technical aspects. For whatever reason.
And we will not ask you which network are you on, because that will be a very difficult question for you to answer either way. Okay.
But thanks, Rohit, for filling in. So, so we really need to see on, can we do a leapfrog? The third thing is in catalyst, I would say we really need to see, in terms of the whole ecosystem, that how do we create. So there are a lot of things which will come with the, the solar cell manufacturing, and when we look for, backward integration, which could be all the components which are used in the value chain. So, from a module perspective, you could look at aluminum frames. You could look at glass manufacturing. Right now, there are limited players doing, the solar cell glass manufacturing, solar panel glass manufacturing. So all of that can come. And then from a cell perspective, we really can see that in terms of making solar cells with wide variety of the technologies which are available, you would require gases and chemicals. So India already has, some of the leading names who can help. And then maybe some of the larger names who would want to expand capacity can look to do this production themselves as well in terms of the gases and chemicals required, which could be some of them could be some peculiar things. We could also look from in solar cell manufacturing, other consumables and things like silver paste. So there are very, very few players right now globally who can supply, and these impacts efficiency directly. There are small components like ribbons, wires, junction boxes. So all of this can, provide a whole ecosystem. And if we can create it like the way it's done in some of the larger setup where, you plan some manufacturing of polysilicon where the cost of power is cheap. And that makes, because your majority of your production cost is the cost of power. And then look at places for an integrated supply chain where you make ingot wafers, cell and module. So you get wafers from one place and then it is transported to your cell place. In that case, we can, set up this whole ecosystem in terms of supply chain and logistics. Apart from that, the other catalyst is, of course, the regulatory framework, for which I feel India is right now very well positioned. The central government has already launched a PLI scheme for domestic solar module manufacturing. And they are giving more incentives to players who want to do more backward integration. So in terms of scoring for that PLI scheme, the capacity is one part of it. So if you want to do 2 gigawatt, if you want to do 3 gigawatt, you want to do 4 gigawatt. So basis on that, your scoring is done. So they are promoting scale with that. And then they are also promoting the other half of the scoring would be done within integration. So you only do cell and module, you get lesser marks. But if you do ingot, wafer, cell and module, you get more marks. If you do polysilicon to the modules, then they are giving you more marks. So with that, the idea from the government is to provide an impetus towards scale, which is what we are missing compared to some other Asian countries, and also in terms of the backward integration. So those are two things in terms of policy the central government is promoting. But at the same time, states also need to be a little more forthcoming and provide some preferential landing, provide some preferential treatment for these large fabs which are coming. So we've all seen from a manufacturing perspective, this will not be the first time, not only for solar cell, but maybe even with the semiconductor industry, a reliable power and water was one of the basic requirement. And if we can address this at this moment, I guess even for the solar cell manufacturing, it will be very, very helpful. So we really need to have in this cohesive ecosystem working between the center and state. And states also needs to provide what they have already done with the other sectors, could be automotive, could be other sectors, chemical as well, where the fixed capital subsidies on the amount of capex could be, waiver of electricity duties, and which are, not that these are the first time such things would be given for any other part of the manufacturing, depending on the size of projects, depending on the state where you are planning to put up and their interest, whether it is in third sector or not. States have done it in past, so I would say maybe right now as well. And on a technology side, we really need to see the world is moving towards larger and larger modules. So we have shifted from M10 to M12, and that shift is already being in place. So most of the solar panels are done with either 182 mm or a 210 mm kind of in wafer. So how we can see that, are there any more possibilities of increase in wafer size? But at least we should benchmark ourselves, compared to the leading global players. So those are some of the initial thought process, Pawan, I had for the catalyst, which can play a key role. Apart from what you've already spoken on, government support on basic customs duty through safeguard. So all tariff and non-tariff things which you already told, these would definitely add to the list of catalysts.
No, I think that was a brilliant opening. I fully agree with you. The backward integration is extremely important because that will provide for real energy security. And the current capacity in terms of cells is just 3 gigawatts, where there are 18 players, and in modules it is 11 gigawatts, where there are 175 players. So this often leads to high operating costs and also sometimes non-credible manufacturing. And what you are saying is that if the market is flooded with whales, we need to have some large backwardly integrated operators. Having said that, I also understand that you would mean that the large companies will create the current, which will allow the smaller companies to move forward in that current. And the smaller companies will provide the frugality and the R&D innovation, etc., which is required because of their greater agility. So this is one point. The second point which you are bringing out is the coherence between center state, and not only in center state, but also orchestrating this entire policy so that it happens so that wherever those places are there where the power costs, etc., are low, which is a big component of solar PV manufacturing, is where these companies come up. And the third point which you made was regarding incentives. Yes, even when the oil drilling started, not only in India, but all over the world, there were tax incentives and incentives associated with drilling for oil, because oil was so much better a source than coal, which it was replacing. And the last point, you've spoken about technology. Great points, Kapil. Let me come to Rohit and ask him what he feels are the main catalysts for this sector going forward. And also add to what Kapil has said about the PLI. No PLI scheme can be 100% acceptable to everybody, but there is surely this advantage or this, let me say, consideration in the architecture of the PLI scheme, that it is pushing forth the backward integration, which is very vital to maintaining energy security. But please come with your thoughts, Rohit.
Yeah, I think the PLI scheme launched by the Indian government is very interesting, and a lot of thought has been put into it. So, they are promoting scale and backward integration, as Kapil mentioned. And, adding on to that, the government is promoting technology also. So a couple of aspects which are there is they're talking the incentive or the marks increase for higher efficiency and better temperature coefficient. So what the government is trying to do is basically incentivize better technologies, not just in terms of efficiency, but also in terms of energy density. So, I believe that the Indian government has done a very good job. They have done their homework. Obviously, there will always be scope for improvement. We can't get everything right in one go. But as compared to what has been done in the past, over probably the last 5 years, 10 years, what has come out today as far as a PLI is something which has been very receptive. And if you look at backward integration, it is not easy. There are a lot of challenges, and the government needs to do a lot more, as Kapil said, central and state governments. And one of the things is that with backward integration, thin film has a big advantage there. So they don't, on this technology, they don't have that, it doesn't take them very long to get into the backward integration mode. It's just one step and process. So that's the reason I think we see First Solar has already announced their plans to manufacture in India. So definitely, I'll say this is what I have to add from what Kapil had to say. So, yeah.
Let me come to Prashant. Prashant, what would you like to add to the catalysts and the roadblocks in this space? We can't hear you.
Sorry. So in addition to what Kapil and Rohit has said, from my perspective, what I feel is that the biggest roadblock or the biggest catalyst which is required is clarity on the policies from the government. If you see, traditionally, what we have seen is that we had National Solar Mission announced in 2007. No, I think in 2011, which said 20 gigawatt as the target. So 20 gigawatt itself meant that manufacturing would come at a very small scale in India, and then in 2014 that became 100 gigawatt. So that gave clarity on that the government is serious about creating a market for solar. After that, by the time government could come clear on what the policies in terms of their support is, they tried to figure out the DCR policy came in, then safeguard duty, and still the manufacturers are not clear on how the policies will be. BCD has been announced, not yet notified, so everybody is assuming that BCD is going to come from 1st of April, but still not notified. So I think the biggest catalyst for me as a manufacturer would be the government has to have a clear set of policies on what they really want to do to bring in manufacturing into India. By the time government started SGD, we had already missed the bus. China had scaled to a level wherein India was never able to cope up, and then SGD was tapering. Every year was going down, so everybody was waiting for the safeguard duty to get over and then import to start again. So now with BCD coming in, government is now getting serious about it. So that one factor is the biggest factor which will bring in manufacturing into India in a big scale. The other thing is the PLI scheme. Obviously, Kapil has spoken about in detail about the PLI scheme. Though it is, it's only 4,500 crore, but it's a good start compared to what they are doing for battery. It's 18,000 crores. So it's non-comparable, the kind of scheme which has come in for PLI. Apart from this, the other catalyst is obviously subsidies in terms of capital subsidies. The rate of interest is, we don't see any benefit given to manufacturers in terms of rate of interest or any capital subsidy. Rather, if I go to IREDA, I get higher interest rate than I would get from getting it from bank. So we don't have any benefit going to a specific renewable energy agency who is there to promote manufacturing and renewable energy. So all these factors are very important to make an environment for manufacturing. By the time these BCD got announced, India has a ability to scale manufacturing, many folds. You see, more cell manufacturing was only 2.5 gigawatt operational by the time BCD got announced. Already manufacturers had said, the announcement happened for about 10 gigawatt cell manufacturing. So there is capabilities, but there has to be some clarity and support, and then manufacturing can become as big as, not as big as China, but at least at a decent scale.
Excellent points. Really fantastic. You have sparked up the debate. And basically what Rohit said, that, and Kapil also said, that the government has provided incentives, but its policies technology agnostic. It is saying go for higher efficiency, go for higher energy density, but it is not saying that go through this technology or that technology, which allows it to be more nimble, and it is learning from mistakes of others as well as itself in the past. And secondly, Rohit has also said perhaps he's alluded that it is possible that this policy should be a little flexible and it can be tweaked from time to time when the opportunity arises for that. The point which you made, the DCR and the safeguard duties. The DCR did not work so well. Actually, not only in India, other countries, top countries, greatest planners have tried it, it did not work so well. In the JNSSM case, you remember that we got challenged in WTO. I appreciate the government that post that challenge, it tweaked that part of the policy which got challenged, because WTO said that this is not domestic purchase. It was a preferred purchase of domestic PVs. They said that this is not government purchase, it is in the commercial space. So the government pivoted and said that, okay, the defense purchase is government purchase. The PSU purchase is government purchase. So at least that should be allowed to be made only from domestic companies. And I appreciate that agility of the government. However, the point which I would like to ask now all of you, first, the BCD, it will surely be an incentive to manufacture in India. But will we be able to keep the cost of power tariff where it is when we indigenize the power generation through India-made solar PV cell? This is point number one. Point number two, you clearly brought in that batteries is a high value space, but the multiple of 18,000 versus 4,500 crores perhaps doesn't keep in mind fully that backward integration in solar PV cell manufacturing is also very high capex. A 500 megawatt plant in PV cells, I'm not even talking backward integration, costs more than $50 million. And if you speak about polysilicon and ingot, etc., that is what you have highlighted. And the third point you have highlighted is rate of interest, cost of capital. Internationally also, through Basel III norms, the European banks now are not so keen on lending to renewable sector. And nationally also, whatever is sold to the government, that is not very easily lent to by the banks. So what is it that the government or the banking system can do? These are some questions which I would like to now bring up before this panel. Kapil.
See, Pawan, let me first start with the project finance perspective. So we have seen the project finance do happens for the downstream side. We have all seen, and both equity and debt. In terms of investor base also, we have seen a wide variety from an investor base from pure financials to strategic, so PE, VC, pension funds. So from an all kinds of investors have shown interest in the Indian renewable story. Where do we see challenge in terms of financing the large manufacturing facilities? That's not a challenge which India is seeing just for solar cell or module or maybe the whole vertical backward integrated chain. That's a challenge India has faced even in other sectors as well. So we really need to figure out ways. How do we work with some of those impact funds or funds which are more focused on ESG or some other financial institutions, even within India or outside, banks or non-banking, but they should be able to fund, provided as what Prashant mentioned, there is in policy certainty. So we all know that this is not the first time we would see, duties. Even when safeguard started, it was 25%. But has that brought in an interest to do manufacturing in India? We have increased maybe 25% now to 40%. Can that additional 15% be absorbed by other players who are trying to, export their modules in India? So from 20, when it was not making sense at 25%, how the basic custom duty of 40% would make a good amount of sense. So we really need to figure out other ways and means apart from providing the incentives with the duties and tariffs. These incentives would be more policy driven. These incentives would be more single window clearances and transparency in the whole process, which is required for not only this any capital intensive industry would require that, that the ease of getting land, the ease of getting, the trained manpower, and the way you could set up and whole research and development setup so that you are ahead of the curve in terms of what technology you should plan, because these are capital intensive process. If you think that right now this is a dominant technology and I will start and I'll take a bet and start manufacturing on this, 3 years down the line, the market is so dynamic and agile that maybe this is not the most prominent technology. And what will happen to your investment by the time your line is up and running? So those are questions which an investor or a manufacturer need to answer. And then there are questions relating to the whole ecosystem development, which we earlier spoke also, that how do we bring this holistic view of any manufacturing setup in India, where we are able to get the manpower, where we are able to get land in place, where we are able to see, even when we source all the things I feel relating to the operating cost, consumables should have an ecosystem within India. You can try and source, the many machines which are making those things, because that's just in one-time import. And then you can train your manpower to, run those machines and set up those process and sharpen the process so that you can, improve on in terms of stability, efficiency, yield of those particular factories. But at least what goes in for the operating those factories should, and the ecosystem for that should all, in terms of consumables, should all be developed domestically. And apart from that, as I said, we really need to figure out how to see this whole PLI, what we spoke is a very, very small bit in the whole ocean, what we are targeting, compared to 450 gigawatt by 2030. I think the government itself is saying this 4,500 crore would just add to a capacity of 8 to 10 gigawatt. So, this particular thing is just an initial boost from the government. As an industry, we really need to figure out how do we make use of this boost and figure out, it will be very, very difficult to compare ourselves and compete ourselves with Chinese, because of they have everything now in setup. They have the supply chain, they have technology, they have low cost of financing, they have the whole ecosystem developed. And then on top of that, they have the scale which no one else has ever imagined or has ever worked. And the imports are not only to India to that great an extent, even other places as well. So other countries are in an equal kind of in position compared to where we are for this ecosystem, at least. So these are kind of things which I feel, if provided and looked by both. See, we and then involve the academic also. We have not seen an industry academia kind of an setup which we have seen in some of the developed countries. So that will help in the advancement of technologies, because some of those R&D kind of projects can also be worked with the leading institutions And we do have the talent, we do have the know-hows present, and it's just a matter of making use of it in a proper way. And then industries can then work on expanding and making it commercializing. And that will also help in this whole ecosystem development.
Great point. Actually, very relevant intervention, and great point in the end also, Kapil. This helps us to move the action piece also forward, because we have received one request of coming together with the industry from Xavier Institute of Management and Entrepreneurship from Professor Joshin John. I hope he's listening to us, and I request him to join the app so that he can find the collaborations on the work which he's doing in this space. Coming to the impact fund piece. Now, the biggest impact fund, which is available on a non-returnable basis, is the $100 billion per annum, or the $100 billion per annum impact fund, which has been announced in Paris for those countries which, like India, which are developing countries, and that is a compensatory fund for them. The disbursement of this fund has been slow, but that is true of all international funds. However, the capture through our negotiators of that fund's share for us is very low. Out of $100 billion, a country which accounts for 17% of the world population has got only $330 million. So we need to see how our negotiators are going to these world gatherings, and are they taking a deserving enough stance? Is their negotiation good enough to kind of get us our share in the pie of funds? The second point, which all three of you are bringing up, is flexible optics, because the world is changing very fast. The technology is changing very fast. So the government also needs to stay on the frontiers of this change so that it can adopt its policy from time to time without being strategically inconsistent with the emerging scenario. Great points. Let me come to Rohit and ask him to add to the manpower, to the land, to the overall ecosystem argument which you have made, Kapil, so that it becomes even more comprehensive, and we present to our audience what all can happen in these spaces. You have highlighted where all are we lacking. I would like Rohit to come in with what can be done in these areas, in the manpower, in the skilling piece, in the land and overall ecosystem development, including R&D. Rohit.
As Kapil said, there is no lack of talent in India. In fact, our CTO is an Indian. He's been with REC for 15 years, and we have pioneered multiple technologies, over the years in REC. So I think it is again, as far as skilled manpower is considered, there are many initiatives which can be done. We can work with institutions. We can also work with, Skill Council of India. They have a separate cell for green jobs, and collaborate with them to develop the skill set of manpower where we need them. And we have actually collaborated with them in the past, and we have seen that there is definitely good potential to do that. On the land front, I think more than the center, it's the states which have to come forward. They have to work with potential manufacturers who are interested to build their manufacturing fabs in India, to proactively support them. And So on that front, I think these are the key aspects here. There are many challenges definitely there when you look at where India stands or where rest of the world stands as compared to China today. it's not a very easy task for us to, do today, but definitely possible. And we have to do it from a perspective of energy security for India. And one of the bigger challenges which I foresee is competing with China in coming years. When I had mentioned earlier that 82% of the production capacity is in China today, the forecast is this is going to grow to 89% by 2025. And the other challenge which will be there will be, wafer thin margins for the, existing manufacturers. So, now the key is here to innovate, bring in the best technologies, and build an ecosystem. I think companies like Reliance have strength in polymers. They can always backward integrate into, EVA and backsheets. And we need to find, companies, probably smaller players who have the capability and help them grow. The larger players need to work on developing an ecosystem in India also. So there is definitely potential here, and not just in terms of capabilities, but in terms of knowledge. So if we work in the right direction, I'm very sure it can be done, and we need to have a very clear roadmap. So somebody has to, we have as industry stakeholders, we have to come together, work out a plan and execute it in the right way.
Great. So coming back to Kapil, before I come to Prashant, and Prashant, I would also like you to throw some light on the consolidation which has happened in China, which the state has managed, so that there is greater synergies and scale among very small companies. Other than that, I will also bring up another couple of points to you, Prashant. But before that, let me go to Kapil to complement one of the questions which is emerging. Sorry, authors, I cannot, they're not just coming to my mind, but it has emerged here. What national expertise and local knowledge, etc., companies like Reliance, which are now leading the pack, are already bringing. Are you bringing some global expertise other than you on the Reliance board or advisory board to throw lights on areas which may be emerging, which any one person may miss on the global space? Kapil.
So all I can say to answer this, we do have a New Energy Council where we have the global experts sitting on the New Energy Council, providing us the guidance. And you might have seen that the similar thing when our chairman also spoke during the AGM. And like any other industrial house in India, we are open for partnerships. We are open for joint ventures. We are open for acquiring any know-hows. And we do value, talent all across the globe. So, and we firmly believe that talent is available in India as well. So this is what I can say specific to this question.
Great. And the other point which I will come back to you, because you are very keen on backward integration now as a company, is the presence of minerals. Are we kind of deficient in any minerals or any technologies for backward integration? But before that, let me go to Prashant to ask him, Prashant, what about the consolidation piece? Consolidation in the Chinese industry has brought in staffing synergies, sourcing synergies, technology development, process development synergies. Do you feel that is there some way in a democratic setup where this kind of loose consolidation can happen? And is it required right now, or it is quite okay for some very large players to emerge, a few very large players to emerge, and many smaller players can coexist in this space, and scale is not so important to quality or cost? Prashant.
Ultimately, when the market matures and when the market becomes big and large players come in, consolidation does happen. Comparing it with China, I think we cannot compare it, with China, because consolidation can happen when, or takeover can happen when you have something, to take over. So you have several small manufacturers, but the assets are not as which are really something which you need to own. Those assets are either the equipments are very old or they are not. So when you say 150 model manufacturers, actually not many are operational. There are some numbers are there, but not many are operational. Some are operational, but they might be doing some OEM and all. But as the market will become big and more players come in, and integrated manufacturing happens, then obviously small manufacturers, either they also need to scale up, or they will ultimately become, they will vanish, or get taken over. So in India also, that is going to happen, but not immediately. I don't think that is going to happen immediately.
Great. Before I come to the questions, there are some clarifications let me give quickly in a telegrammatic code. Yes, Reliance is in the entire backward integration space, and also in the energy storage space, and even in the hydrogen space. That is what the chairman of Reliance has spoken. And regarding the minerals piece, Kapil, are we self-sufficient in minerals and mineral quality? Or would we be dependent on certain minerals which might be required in the manufacture of the end-to-end value chain? Kapil.
So Pawan, while I may not be the right person to answer on minerals given my limited exposure in that sector, all I can say from an solar cell manufacturing, the least of raw material could be quartz, or in silica, or in sand, which for in solar grid is available in India. But if you talk of some other minerals where we speak on renewable and storage technologies, we have seen some of those it's not so self-sufficient, etc. But given my limited perspective there, I would limit it to only solar cell manufacturing.
Okay, great. So Rohit, I would like you to comment on purchase ecosystem. And before I come to that, let me just try to add what I know about the mineral piece. Earlier, gallium was required in the value chain, and this was a rare earth. But over time, this has itself been replaced by other more commonly available minerals. So as on the mineral space and the PV manufacturing space, we are not lacking as far as I know. But in the energy storage space, as Kapil also mentioned, we have already covered that in a separate webinar in depth, and there are some air pockets there surely. Rohit, on the purchase ecosystem piece, is there some greater predictability of purchase required? Is there longer term PPAs required to galvanize interest in this space?
I think, thanks, Pawan. So just adding one point on the minerals and the backward integration side, I'm not sure about the mineral aspect, limited knowledge there, but when it comes to backward integration, one of the biggest challenges is availability of low cost energy and reliable energy. So this is primarily for silicon purification, and even for the ingoting process, which is very highly energy intensive process. So, some of the advancements which are happening in this field already are basically a low carbon footprint silicon, which comes from hydropower, recycled silicon. So we are already doing that from our Norway operations today. So now coming back to the demand side, long-term PPAs, we already have 25-year PPAs, 20-year PPAs as an industry practice, which I believe is good enough. But I think one of the things which the government can think about is promoting, higher efficiency products. For example, China had a program which incentivized higher efficiency products. Now, if we look at a couple of other countries like South Korea and France, they are incentivizing lower carbon footprint products and are also, adoption of more sustainable technologies. So some of the advancements, apart from lower carbon footprint, which is happening in the industry today, is new cell connections, wherein lead is being eliminated completely, and we have RoHS compliant products. So
RoHS, please give the full form also.
I would not be able to do that. Sorry.
I think it is regarding hazardous
materials in a product. I don't know the exact full form out there, but there is a certain limit for multiple types of hazardous materials, which lead is one of them. And when we look at solar modules, soldering of the modules is done by, with lead being the key material there. So among the new advances which are already happening, even though they are not available in the mainstream in India or even in other markets, is the advanced cell technologies, which is eliminating of lead and any other hazardous materials. We are also seeing different things like gapless technology, shingle, overlap, etc. So, so what I see is that government can look at incentivizing more sustainable, more innovative, and better technologies. So, what's the point of having a solar module which probably consumes so much energy that the solar module takes 10 years to regenerate that amount of energy? So these are again aspects which when you look at fossil fuel burnt energy, which is used a lot in China, the carbon footprint is pretty high in these products. So we have manufactured products in the past, and we do that even now, wherein our carbon footprint is very low, and the payback time is just over a year for a country like India.
Yeah, great points. In fact, you have taken it to the next level of evolution. That gray energy, which is the energy captured in a product from start to finish for its entire life cycle, also is being accounted for by some countries. Great point. And regarding let me now come to the questions. The first question which I would like to pose to Kapil, and Prashant, I'll just come to you in a moment. What is the USP of Indian cell and module manufacturers? Point number one. Question number one. And question number two is, once we achieve complete backward integration, are we going to be at par with Chinese modules in terms of prices? The first question comes from Hemkant Limai, Senior Director, Global Marketing at LM Wind Power. And the second comes from Abhishek Chatterjee of NTPC. Kapil.
So while I missed the second question, Pawan, but let me answer the first one, USP. So the biggest USP is what we have at this moment is the demand side of it. So, we have an ambition to do this 450 gigawatt. And if you talk of 2020, 100 gigawatt also, while we all know that we have missed it 100 gigawatt solar, but not by, this itself, whatever we have achieved itself is in a big boost. So I would say, one incentive what is available is for one of the USP, what I can say is that you would be able to sell your product within India, and if you make a good quality product at the right price, given present geopolitical situation, there would be countries where Indian made modules can be competitive and at the same time provide the right quality standards. So that is one of the USP, I would say. The second USP, I would say, what we have is we are, as I said earlier also, we are not carrying any baggage. So anything which we see as in technology advance right now, that 10 years down the line, this would be the more prominent technology. And after that, for the next 10 years, this would be the thing. So we don't have lot of this fabs which are the factories which are already built for within previous technology. So at this moment, this gives us a flexibility to take a call that which technology we can bet and start working towards that, and take the components and the machinery to build factories accordingly. So these are two USPs, I would say. The first USP, I would say, the demand gives you a benefit of scale, that even when you want to put a scale of 20 gigawatt, which is what would be at least in scale of a size which a leading Chinese would have, and if you choose the right technology and the right partners, you would be able to sell your products not only in India, but the avenues are present even outside India. So these are the two USPs I would say at this moment available um, in the Indian ecosystem.
So
And Pawan, if
demand
you
and
can let me know the second question, I'll try.
yeah, the second question is that if once you achieve complete backward integration, will your prices be on par with the Chinese modules? Right now, there is a difference of 10 to 20%.
So the difference is because of two things. First, as we spoke, is the backward integration, and second is scale and the way the logistics and supply chain is set up there. So the cost of power for the polysilicon plant right now in China, and those happens mostly in the northern part of China. So the hydropower is very, very cheap there and reliable there as well. So, it will be difficult for many of those Indian setup to, yes, get the power, reliable power at such cheaper prices at this moment. But at the same time, to answer the question that if we achieve backward integration, can we compete? Yes, to an extent we can, given that not that all Chinese are able to provide some good products at the price what they are quoting. But within the Indian ecosystem, we can try to bridge that whole 10-20% gap what we are speaking, partially with backward integration, but we really need the scales as well. The economies of scale would play a role, but only to a certain extent. After that, we will realize that economies of scale are not playing a role. We really need to figure out advancements in technology and your, how do you manage your factories? And you would believe that Indians have the capabilities to increase the yield and the reliability from any factory, not only solar. And we have seen this in other sectors. So that can provide us a good benefit compared to rest of the world, where we can develop this whole thing in a much more structured way, that we are from the same process, same machinery, same technology. If any other place, if we were losing 0.5% in the yield, we can try and optimize it to 0.1 or 0.2. And to my best of knowledge, abilities and belief, there is no better country for a circular economy because it's being imbibed in Indians from childhood. So, I guess we will be able to make use of that, what we have done in other industries and sectors as well.
Yeah, our sense of prudence is very good and we can really extract the last mile out of the nickel. So Prashant, what are the module price trends till March 22 and beyond? And any other point which you would like to make regarding the conversation so far, Prashant?
Yeah, so module prices, as of now, what we see is that module prices, it's very fluctuating as of now. So module prices continues to go up and down, but what we see trend is that it's going to go up till March 22. The reason behind that is one is that October, November, last quarter of the calendar year, you have traditionally the demand is higher globally. So the cell and module prices are high because of high demand. And then in January, February, which is the next quarter, which is going to be our end of the financial year, the demand in India will be high. And because of the hype of BCD, there's going to be additional demand in the market. So I think the prices are going to remain firm for next, at least for this year, this financial year. That is what we are seeing. And then post BCD, I feel that initial quarter will be a little slow because a lot of import would have happened. And then I think then obviously prices are going. So we're not going to see much prices going down, but it is more, it is more determined by the China factor. And what we have been seeing is that after this SGT was removed, China increased prices by 15%. So the impact in the market has actually not happened in terms of pricing going down after SGT. And that is, this actually leads me to the question which was earlier asked, was which Kapil just answered, is why to make in India? What are the factors which makes it important to manufacture in India? And the reason is that even if you do entire cell and module in India, 50% of the product price still goes to China. So basically you are incentivizing manufacturing in China. So ultimately you need to have, if you want to achieve 450 gigawatt, you need to have manufacturing the entire value chain in India. That is the foremost. I think that is the biggest incentive, for manufacturing, that is important. So, that is the biggest factor why you need to manufacture, because we are too dependent on China, and you cannot dream of becoming a from 20% of renewable energy share to 70%, or from 100 gigawatt to 450 gigawatt. Dream cannot be achieved if there's no manufacturing. And we have a model which is the automobile manufacturing. That is a model which India followed, and today manufacturing, India is the third largest automobile manufacturer, and that did not happen if all imports would have been free, and once that happens, today all big brands are manufacturing in India, and automatically ancillaries comes in, and efficiencies and good products start manufacturing. One couple of days back I was talking to a automobile ancillary manufacturer, and he said we are exporting to China. And that is the kind of scale which happens because India has such a large market in automobile, and the same solar is also similar to that. When you have market, then why not make in India and then export from India?
Absolutely. So, Atmanirbharta, the definition of Atmanirbharta which Blue Circle has taken for some sectors is the ability to source products at my terms, my prices, unconditionally from anywhere. However, this changes in sectors like energy or sectors like aerospace and defense, because energy is also a sector which has geopolitical implications. And in fact, somebody has said, I'm forgetting, energy is politics. So here, making the product in India becomes extremely important. And end-to-end, making it in India, even if in the beginning we cannot 100% match the quality, if the quality of our PV cells in the beginning, yearly deterioration is 0.6% more than the other cells. If the price is a little higher than the other cells, still it is very important to make it in India. Because as I said, there is no plan B on this, because we don't have a planet B and we don't have a country B. You know, this is our country, and this sector is so very important, and it is indispensable to make in India. I feel we had a very good session so far, today, and I will have to close it now in the interest of time. But the questions which came really livened it up. The panel was highly well informed, and so were the audience, and they stayed engaged with us for much beyond the time in big numbers. And thank you very much for that. Any questions which I have not been able to answer in the given time, please put up on the app, and we will try and ensure that they reach the panel and you get most informed answers from them. On that note, I will pass it on to Siddharth. And thank you very much, panelists. Great panel and great audience.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Pawan.
Thank you. So, thank you very much, sir. Such an insightful and engaging conversation, and an absolute privilege to hear you all. And very well moderated, Mr. Chaudhary. Our leaders and I have been hooked till the end, and have taken home several nuggets from today's conversation. I'm also receiving messages from our members on my WhatsApp, on email, and in the app as well. And we really wish we had some more time. And thank you to our leaders in the audience for joining in large numbers, and for always staying till the end, and for always sharing excellent questions. For the questions that may not have been addressed due to paucity of time, I will share the relevant ones with the leaders on the panel and request some of their time for it. We will also try to post the answers in the community app as well. So along with our weekly webinar series and our publication, we're taking these discussions and conversations live on the exclusive app for leaders across our 6 sectors, which are energy, logistics, healthcare, e-mobility, real estate, and aerospace and defense. So whether you would like to engage with us on the platform, you are invited to join the energy circle and also get access to the other allied circles which we're building. I've also shared the link of the app, and I will also be emailing you all post the app as well, post the session as well. So thank you very much, sirs, once again. We look forward to having more such discussions. Please stay safe. Look forward. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Pawan. Thanks, Kapil, Prashant, Siddharth.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Good session. Thanks, Siddharth. Thanks, Pawan.